Hey guys, what's up? Stock Retail coming back to you. Got kind of a different take today. Obviously, usually I have been kind of an AMC and Bitcoin channel. Although I will say, for 4 years, gosh, we're getting close to 4.5 years. If you've been an ape, then you have swirled around all of these discussions. And I don't think we need to keep saying, who's a GameStop ape or who's an AMC ape or who's a Bitcoin, whatever. So just today, without apologies, I'm going to review the GameStop filing because what I saw through my feed, at least, and perhaps some of you saw, was a mishmash of some good takes, some bad takes, I suppose some hot takes, and then some clickbait. And so it just was kind of bugging me that people were, in some cases, giving bad information. I saw some apes maybe reposting bad information. And if you followed me for any length of time, or I suppose if you're new to me, you may not have heard me, but people who followed me for a while know I especially used to say a lot more, no trust me bros here. I like reviewing filings, looking at what it actually says, doing the DD, right? So let's go through that. Probably quicker video today. And for people following me for AMC, this is going to be a real GameStop heavy video because we're going to review the GameStop filing. And of course, we're touching a lot of Bitcoin topics here too. So some points of note, I'm going to go through the filing. I'm going to show you screenshots and just what I like to do. The AMC apes would know we had like all our court cases and all kinds of filings. I like to go through and take all the legalese and just put it into plain speak and tell you what I see on that. And so we'll do that a little bit, but some things you're going to see through this video. First of all, these are 0% bonds. So, it's not like GameStop is taking on a whole bunch of debt or something. When you hear convertible notes, a lot of times you're hearing debt. This is a little bit different than that. They are convertible, so we're going to talk about what does that mean. They're convertible at a price, but really not with any interest. So it should speak volumes to you about the overall financial world's hunger for Bitcoin financial instruments. And obviously, you've been hearing a lot about MicroStrategy, or now just strategy, and really strategy and strife. Love the names that Saylor has been putting out there. And so you've been hearing a lot about this, but you're also watching, if you've been following the financial world, a lot more corporations starting to follow a little bit in Saylor's footsteps. He's kind of carving out a new industry, basically. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Why would people be doing this? So then we're going to talk about pricing. That's going to matter, especially if you are deep in GameStop, then you really care about what was this pricing? What does that potentially mean to the value of your stock? Because the shills like to come out and talk about dilution and things like that. And so I like to make sure we look at all parts of an equation. We were going to talk about 2030. Obviously, these notes are kind of not due until 2030, which is in a way like people saying, here, you can have some cash for 5 years, go do with it what you want. That's a pretty big deal. And so obviously they're expecting some return on this, but we'll talk about that. And then the fact that these are unsecured, I really want to draw your attention to that, because a secured note is like if you get a mortgage on your house, it's backed up, it's secured with this thing that you don't want to lose. You don't want to lose your house, right? So a lot of times when a company has debt, like those of us who follow AMC, there are secured notes. You'll see like second lien secured notes and senior secured notes and stuff like that. Also, what's securing it is actual assets that if a company ever goes bankrupt, that the debt holders basically take over the company, which is why there's such a focus right now on sort of vulture capitalism, let's call it, and people who try to take over companies. But that's a whole other topic for another day. But the point is, these are unsecured. So there's not really a lot backing these other than people wanting to do business with RC and GameStop and wanting to get access to Bitcoin. So it's a pretty big deal. All right, so we kind of covered that these are 0%. These are convertible. So if you don't know, convertible notes are basically like a debt instrument that can be flipped into shares. So that's why some will kind of maybe shill and come at you about dilution. But, hang on, because I'm going to talk to you about maybe what's the value created here. And I see a lot personally. I think this is pretty amazing. If you follow me on X, then you know I'm pretty bullish on this. So we talked about 2030, that these are not due till then. I'm just showing you the actual filing here now. You could just get this from their website. I always encourage people, go directly to the source. You can get this from GameStop. You don't need to get this from me. You will see language in there that basically this could be up to, you've seen the 1.3 billion number. That's really 1.28, but there's sort of a plus 200 million. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. Actually, some of that's on this page. So why don't we? Um, I'm not positive I've gotten this date right. So if you look, I'm going to show you sort of about halfway down. GameStop also granted the initial purchaser of the notes an option to purchase within a 13-day period. And so it was kind of beginning on the date which the notes are first issued, which I think is today, um, up to an additional $200 million aggregate principal amount of notes. So basically, we know this is somewhere between 1.28 and 1.48 billion. Just kind of depends on what that purchaser wants to do. And you can see the sale of the notes expected to close April 1st, April Fool's Day. um, so just kind of cool to kind of catch the details there. And so you'll kind of want to just start to, if you haven't been seeing some of this with Saylor and Strategy, start to understand a little bit about these, convertible notes and the 0% and all of that. But effectively, RC is getting a whole lot of cash up front, and you already know what he's kind of doing with it, but we're going to talk about that. So the 1.28 to 1.48 we mentioned, just I'm highlighting and underscoring again, these are unsecured. And so, that is just something that you really want to kind of, I don't know, keep in your mind, because that it's basically really bullish. It just tells you about the health of GameStop and people's willingness to do business with GameStop. So those unsecured obligations will not bear regular interest, and the principal of amount of the notes will not accrete. Accretive kind of means additive, or to build up or add up. So you can see the notes we talked about April 1st, 2030, they'll mature unless they're converted earlier. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. That's in some of the filing here. So hang on to that. And then there's the 1.28 to the 1.48 I was just mentioning. So that we don't have a trust me, bro, I'm just showing you that. So there is some language in there that if certain conditions are met, there can be early conversion. So you'll see here, before January of 2030, holders have the right to convert their notes only upon satisfaction of special conditions and during certain periods. So there's kind of some boundaries getting put there. We know there would be contracts that were exchanged between these parties that have a whole lot more details. This is just the press release I'm using this language from. And I'm going to show you a little bit here as well. That should also make you bullish on price, by the way. So one of the things I did not see a lot of people talking about, people are talking about what's the total dilution, and I am going to kind of cover that. But this does not necessarily mean these are going to convert to shares. There is language in there that says GameStop could decide to pay these off with cash. And so you need to know that, and you need to spot that in the filing. So basically, we were just, if we're kind of building off this last slide about when they kind of, mature. Upon conversion, GameStop will pay or deliver, as the case may be, cash, shares of GameStop's common stock, or a combination of cash and shares. So you can't accurately predict exactly what this is going to mean in terms of dilution, but you can get a pretty good idea, because convertible notes is not necessarily new. In fact, it's not new at all in the world of finance. So there is sort of a pattern and a precedent you could find with other companies. Way back in sort of the end of 2020, there were convertible notes for AMC, the kind of Silver Lake, and you guys maybe know about some of that story. So it's not a new thing, but I just wanted to call your attention to, they left themselves open the door that these might end up being exchanged for cash and not shares. We will see. So on that pricing, I think this matters because today was a tough day. I'm sure if you are, I don't know, emotionally connected to the ticker for GameStop. Yesterday was wildly up, and then today was a pretty, kind of a knife back down. I would just encourage you, I'm not going to cover in great detail in this video because I'm doing more of a flyby, to research sort of the pricing of these and how that's gone for Strategy, or, previously known as MicroStrategy. I saw some people who are part of that community talking about some things that made sense to me. Just I hadn't necessarily thought about it, but just the volatility of what happens on, they were almost calling it like pricing day. So when these notes get offered, kind of how the market responds, which would be yesterday, and then once they're kind of out there getting priced and entering the marketplace, how the market responds again. So today there's a knife up and a knife down that can tend to happen. So there's just a lot of volatility, and to be honest, in some of these markets, for these pro traders and really big companies like the insurance companies and things like that, there is a value to the volatility. But what you want to catch here that I just still think you ought to be bullish about is these are, this 1.33 to $1.5 billion. Somebody's putting out that much money for basically $30 a share for GameStop. So the pricing was right in there in the filing. I've underlined it here for you. Initial conversion price of approximately $29.85 per share. And then you note that they've kind of got this language about that's about a 38% premium over kind of a weighted average price from basically today, I think. So despite your watching the ticker go down a bit today, the price on the conversion did not go down. So if you think about the dilutive effect potentially in the future of these shares getting sold at basically $30 a share, or if you want to flip that and say it in a very positive way, the sort of upward pull or the gravitational pull upward of there's somebody out there willing to buy, $1.3 billion of shares up to $1.5 billion at basically $30 a share for exposure to Bitcoin, right? So that's a big deal and says a lot about the GameStop situation. So I mentioned that's the pricing, the $29.85, but there's language in there that GameStop can change the conversion rate in special circumstances. And so you will see it's on the screenshot here that basically if there are certain corporate events, GameStop calls a vote or has some change in the board of directors. I'm making these up, by the way. These are not necessarily the things they're talking about. Say there's a radical new policy that greatly shifts the direction of the company or something. There can be significant events that maybe GameStop, either sets its own destiny and sort of creates those events, or maybe some things happen to them. But there'll be certain corporate events. Mostly I would think about shareholder meetings and votes and things like that. But I don't know what RC has in mind. He tends to move in silence, and I've learned to respect that. So following certain corporate events that can occur prior to the maturity date of the notes, or now notice this, if GameStop delivers a notice of redemption. So GameStop can also kind of redeem these early if they decide. GameStop will, in certain circumstances, increase the conversion rate of the notes. So in other words, that price goes up, that $29.85, for a holder who elects to convert its notes in connection with such a corporate event, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I'm just making this up in my head now, but I could see, let's say there's a big run, GameStop has an infinity squeeze or something, and over the next couple of years, it's just sort of only up, right? Let's refer to one of Kitty's videos. Then I could see a shrewd manager like RC, let's say, I don't know, it's a year from now, making this up completely, and the stock is at, I don't know, $65 or something. It'd be a fun year to go through, and forget squeeze. I'm not at all talking about a squeeze. This is not price anchoring. Say the stock is at 65, but RC is like, man, we're going to continue to go up. I've been establishing value in this company. It's sort of, there's a Berkshire Hathaway element. There is a strategy, sailor element with Bitcoin. And he says, I would rather buy these now than let these guys convert and pocket even more profits later, and I'll keep the profits on my side. And so then say he says, all right, I'll pay you 60 now instead of the 29.85, but he knows that like in another year the stock's worth 120 or something. So just completely wildly making up numbers. There's no grounding. That's not DD. But you get the idea that there can come a time when GameStop says, you know what, actually, we'd like to go ahead and pay you now, and we'll pay you even more than we had originally agreed on. So that can happen. Doesn't mean it's going to. They've just left themselves the door open in the contract language. So mentioned GameStop can redeem for cash. And actually, so this is also kind of an early redemption. And there was a lot of language in here. So I had to read this. The page I'm showing you, I read this a couple times to make sure. So let me break it down for you. You notice this April 6th, 2028, kind of on the top line here. So effectively like 3 years from now, if the stock, or I just said if the stock closes at 38.805, that's just my math, because you'll see here, look at this, at least 130% of the conversion price. So basically, if like 20 out of 30 trading days close at 38,805 or better, um, then basically GameStop can do an early redemption. They can, so it's kind of like that last page. I was telling you, if RC feels like, hey, we're going up, and I would like to start pocketing more of the profit on my side, and basically not have this gap between what they pay and what they get, what they receive, be so great. He can say, hey, I'm going to go ahead and cash you out early, um, if it's basically at this 130% mark for 20 days or more out of 30 trading days. So go, you can read that, but just you see the top line bullet. There's not a lot more to say about that. I've basically tried to take this page and just put it into one sentence for you, and there's some other restrictions to that. So the point is, he's left himself, hey, if there's certain corporate events and we invite you to let us close early, that can happen. Or we've put some math to it, and if this happens by actually after April 6th, 2028, then we can close you out early. So he's just given himself a couple of options. And then also, oh, I have said 3038 here, but you all know that's 2038. Actually, it's none of the above. This is 2028. Sorry. I don't know how that typo happened. I guess I just hit the 3 twice. Anyway, no, that is not decode anybody. Anybody watching this, I swear to you, up and down, there's no decode meant there. But note holders can begin repurchasing 4/3/2028. And so I was just sort of even asking myself, okay, why would a note holder want to redeem early? We just talked about if the price is going up, they might want to wait. They can pocket more profits later. But so I did just real quickly go kind of look for you, and I thought it through a little myself too. So top right here, why would they maybe redeem early? So different things can happen. So if there's like market pricing shifts, like maybe the notes themselves are worth less, although we're going to talk about whether these notes are really even going to be out on the marketplace. But a note holder can redeem early to pocket a profit. So maybe things have moved a different direction. The notes themselves have gone down in value, but because they had this agreed on value with the company, they can sort of pocket for a profit. If the company was in distress, like if GameStop was in trouble a few years from now, and note that I very clearly put that this is highly unlikely, with all the cash that RC's got and sort of the strength of the stock itself, I just don't see a scenario where GameStop's in trouble anytime in the foreseeable future. So that's not even on my mind, but I'm just letting you know reasons why note holders sometimes can basically cash out early. Another one can be liquidity. So it's possible if a short is on the other end of these notes and ends up needing liquidity, they could cash out early. And then also, because these are convertible, there's times where people just want the stock, and so and that's happened with AMC. There's been some debt to equity conversions, and that can also happen. So just so you know, this screenshot is just telling you there's yet another way that these notes can kind of be closed out early, which is April 3rd, 2028 or after. They can be repurchased early. One of the things I saw that I think is a little bit incorrect is some people were saying that by definition these were sold to that sultan or anybody else overseas. Forgive me, I don't mean to be disrespectful. I don't remember his name. He's just kind of entering my consciousness lately, and I did start following him. But you guys know who I'm talking about. Anyway, basically, there's language in the filing that says, hey, these are unregistered securities, and so they can't be sold in the U.S. without being registered or filing an exception. This is sort of boilerplate language. I went out and looked because I remembered seeing this probably in some AMC filings, but I know I've seen this in other filings, and so I kind of went, checked on my own kind of search, checked with AI, a couple things, and just so you know, man, I just did this video too tight, guys. Here's another, too fast. There's another typo, but again, not decode, please ignore. But anyway, unregistered securities does not have to mean that it's being sold outside the US. That is something that actually is a growing market, and there are a lot of reasons why someone could sell an unregistered security. If you do some DD on this, you'll see some stuff about different scams. That is clearly not happening here. This is on the up and up. You will see plenty of I don't know, trustworthy companies who have started to sell some unregistered securities, And the SEC itself has put guidelines around it, which tells you again that it's enough of a common practice. You can only have qualified buyers. They have to have a certain amount of money they're able to put in and stuff like that. So I guess all I wanted you to know is if you're seeing posts saying, oh, these are unregistered and can't be sold in the US, that does not actually mean that RC and GameStop didn't sell them to a US client. They actually can be, but they just basically, you're not going to see like a secondary market of these. It's not like a normal bond, it's an unregistered security. So just wanted you to know a little bit about that, but not wanting to go deep on that. All right, we're almost done here. Next to last slide here. Just some things that I would encourage you to do DD on and that I'm not going to cover in this video. Some of this I've covered in past videos. Some I will cover in future videos just because I think these are good things to know. So you're going to see the common question of why would someone buy these securities and not just buy Bitcoin if they want exposure to Bitcoin? This is a rapidly growing market sector, and there are plenty of good. I've seen some good podcasts out there. I've seen some good, just kind of written up information. I'll talk about it myself in a few videos. You want to just start to do some DD if you're the kind who likes to do your own DD, especially on why. It's a good question, but it is a question that's been answered. Why not just buy Bitcoin? Why buy these securities? And a follow-on question that's very closely related to that is then what markets does this bring in? So you want to be thinking about not just some surface level assessment of this. This is bringing in a different investor. And that's what Saylor has been doing. And he sort of has blazed the trail. And now you're seeing more and more people following this. So who is the investor that's bringing in, or the investors? And why are they sort of being attracted to this financial instrument, basically? Corporate securities that are connected to Bitcoin, effectively. And not just which markets is this bringing in, but which partners. So you're seeing some high-level financial folks who are kind of showing up as partners to some of these companies. You want to understand that. And I'm feeding you these questions sort of as breadcrumbs because they're going to help you understand this, and they're going to help you kind of be a little bit FUD-proof on this topic. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. That's in 2 bullets. So why is volatility a valuable commodity? That's something connected to all those first few questions. When you think about who is coming in, who is interested in these securities and sort of asset classes, let's call it, and why are they interested in it, and why is volatility actually a good thing for them? I mean, geez, you saw GameStop way up, way down. There are people who make a lot of money on volatility, and so you may start to see more of that. I don't, by the way, don't let me spook you on the stock. That's not necessarily what I mean. It could be the securities themselves, it can be the Bitcoin itself, and yes, it can be the stock. But ultimately, I think you're going to be very happy, over the next few years of what this really means. What is the difference between a Ponzi and a proven asset-backed monetization model? I think that really matters. I've been pretty grouchy with some people, not with your average Joe, but with a few people who I think by design are echoing sort of short and distort talking points about Ponzi schemes that was directed at Saylor, and now you're going to see it directed at RC and GameStop. There are people who don't understand this business model, so they like to call it a Ponzi. There are also people who understand it and they don't want it to gain traction, so they call it a Ponzi. But the point is, you need to understand the difference between a Ponzi versus actually something that is backed by an asset, in this case Bitcoin, and provides real value between the asset itself and that volatility I was just talking about. And then just continue to do DD. That's why I put it here 3 times. Bitcoin, Bitcoin, Bitcoin. Boy, it has changed my financial worldview as I've done DD, I don't know, about the last not quite 2 years for me. So I was late to the Bitcoin party, but boy, honestly, I would put it to you this way. I don't think there is late to Bitcoin. There's just when you get to it and you start waking up and realizing what it really is. That's my point of view on it. And people who follow me know that. You can see a lot of videos from me on that. So bottom line thoughts. First, I'll just reveal, it's going to be pretty obvious that I'm bullish on this. Here is a post that I did, what is this, like 10 months ago, last June. And so this was when RC, when Kitty had come back and RC was doing the shares back last June. I'll be honest, at the time I was a little bummed. I thought maybe that was kind of a pressure release valve on what could have been a squeeze then for both of us in GameStop and AMC. But since then, I mean, credit to RC. Boy, he brought in a lot of cash for his company and made his company very, very strong, and is now charting a course forward. So, I honestly tipped my cap to him, even if I didn't love it in that moment. But now a lot of respect for him on how strong he's made the company. So, what I had said at that time when he sold those shares, you can see it right here, part Saylor, part Buffett. I was literally talking about GameStop here in this post, last June, where I just felt like he ought to use a large portion of those funds and buy Bitcoin, and then use a large portion of the funds and diversify his portfolio of companies, basically, which is the path that Berkshire Hathaway took. It's just a diverse collection of valuable companies, and I use value in terms of deep value. We're talking about here. So you already know that I'm for this. Is all I'm trying to tell you there. But what else am I noticing about this that are my bottom line thoughts? First of all, he didn't consume any of the existing cash, so that, like, I don't know, 4.7 billion that GameStop is sitting on. What might he still do with that? I cannot imagine he's just sitting there, swimming in it like Scrooge McDuck. I'm pretty sure he's got different things he's been cooking up. So let's see what he does with the rest of the cash. I think that's pretty cool that he's about to buy over $1 billion in Bitcoin and didn't even touch his cash stockpile. That's impressive. If I'm you guys, that, let's say, the GameStop community, I would be pretty excited for what that could mean. Um, Potential for future dilution, just want to acknowledge it's there. I do the same thing when we talk AMC. That is not FUD, it's just out there. So if you take that 29.85 price, then, and basically base it on the 1.28 to 1.48 billion dollars, and then think about how many shares are already out there. So it's about 9.6 to 11.1% possible dilution. But if you follow me at all, you know that I always say, the shills will only talk to you about dilution. But if you believe in your company, and I believe in this company, then the next step you need to think through is value creation. He's not just putting these convertible notes out there. There's actual cash that comes in, and then in this case, that cash converts to Bitcoin, right? So, I've kind of jumped ahead to, let's say all of that goes to Bitcoin. Well, what is that worth if it goes up 50%, or if it 2x's or 4x's or 10x's? Really research where Bitcoin is likely to go the next few years, and the fact that sovereign entities like pretty much all of the US states, that's an exaggeration, but we're at probably between 20 and 30 US states are pretty far along on moving towards buying Bitcoin in their reserves. You know that the federal government under the Trump administration is going to be buying Bitcoin. There's talk about even converting some of our gold reserves into Bitcoin reserves. You know that, like, Hong Kong and China and Russia and, oh, I forgot, there's a couple other smaller nations, one of the Nordics, and I don't know, there's a few others. Switzerland has looked at it. So sovereign entities are starting to buy Bitcoin. You can just imagine what's happening the next few years. So I don't think this dilution is going to be even more than a blink of your eye at some point, because you're going to be loving the value creation that it drives. That's just my opinion. And then this 0% rate that the notes convert in 5 years, obviously being such a great signal for people who want to partner here. And if you followed me for any amount of time, then you know what I believe. And honestly, here, if you've been in this journey for a few years, you know that there's been animosity, and I've come to believe actually mostly false and manipulated animosity between the AMC and GameStop communities, and I've just kind of rejected that over time. It's just not worth it. And not only that, but this is a retail movement. So if you're pro retail, it doesn't matter which stock wins. And frankly, also, if we look at DJT, if we look at MSTR, if we look at GameStop, if we look at us, I believe there is a movement of retail saying, and even, guys, that's the original spirit, I think, of Bitcoin in a way. The decentralization movement, the movement away from central banking control, powers that control our whole destiny. What have we been upset with in terms of our stonks? Manipulation, fraud, distortion, the machine, in effect, fighting against our best interests and for the very, very few who sit in power. And so, I believe in apes together strong. And so I'm just going to say, for all of us, we will win. So let's go.